Hello everyone. Thanks for joining the the third session for the hackathon. We organize in preparation and looking forward toward the Cardano Summit happening in November, from November 2nd to 4th. I hope I didn't confuse those dates, in beautiful Dubai. We are having today our Ask Me Anything session. I brought a team member of my team. It's Fabian again. You already know him from last time when he was talking about some developer basics for when you want to build on Cardano. Today I want to start with a quick recap on what this hackathon is about. We already received some questions. I'm going to provide some answers to those. And then, of course, I completely rely on you, because otherwise this is going to be an improvisation show of filling the full hour. But I'm pretty confident that there will be some good questions coming up. So first of all, big thank you to everyone who joined the hackathon. So far, we have more than 300 participants now, which is pretty cool, given the short frame and time that we had to prepare everything and let you know about that this hackathon is happening at all. We already saw some first people delivering results. I saw some great questions on Discord, which I'm going to recap also again. So that's really, so thank you very much for your participation so far. Next step would be a quick recap. Let me see if I can share my screen. Of course I can. And there we go. With the website on Hacker Earth, with the basic information about the hackathon. So as you might be well aware of, we started this hackathon on August 10th, around midnight, when you were able to register for it. The hackathon ends September 15th. We are expecting you handing in the things that you have created until September 14th. Then we are providing you with a couple of webinars. First one was of course the kickoff webinar, where I provided you with some basic information about the hackathon. Second one was Fabian and Matti presenting about how to build on Cardano. On the one hand, on the pretty web front end side, I'd say, like how to connect a wallet, how to create a transaction and submit it. Then the other part was about smart contracts. This week we have the Ask Me Anything session. And next week there is a so-called sprint session where I will reiterate over the well, let's say our expectations and what might be good ideas to add to your contributions, so that you have a bit more clarity on what we want you to deliver, which might make your deliverable more attractive for us, and things like that. There are already some questions included this week regarding what to deliver, if there are any preferences and stuff like that. And I will address them already this week because it gives you just more time to adapt to it. But we have a dedicated session for it planned for next week as well. Besides the dates, which you can see here and here again on the Hacker Earth website, I just wanted to reiterate on the price. And we have only one prize for the winning team, which is 10,000 US dollars, including 5,000, no, on top 5,000 US dollars for travel accommodation to the Cardano Summit, because of course we want to see the winning team over there. The topic of the hackathon and the theme of the hackathon, it is called Transparency for Governance. As you might know or might not know, Cardano has entered the age of Voltaire. We're discussing with the community, the funding entities, all the stakeholders of the ecosystem, how we can move forward with an open and decentralized governance system for Cardano, where the community members are empowered to vote on, vote basically on the future of the Cardano ecosystem. And in that scheme, we have set this hackathon because we are interested in all your contributions. May it be something that is developed as source code, or even concepts, slides, user interface designs for voting applications, providing education even over the topic of open governance and how it's handled on Cardano, or even how it's handled in other ecosystems, and where we could probably lend some good concepts on. Those are all topics of this hackathon theme, and we are looking forward to your contributions to it. So much for the recap. Let me stop sharing my screen to not get distracted. There we go. That's a tiny button. Good. So first question that I received via Discord, and Alice also posted it in the question and answer section of the Zoom call, is if we have any preferences regarding the programming language, and if it does impact how we value as judges your contribution. And the or maybe Alice, you can also share the link to the Discord server, because someone is asking for it. But in response to that question, if we prefer any specific programming language, I guess this question came up because last week we were presenting some builder tools in the Java ecosystem and maybe some from the JavaScript ecosystem. No, we don't have any preference. You can hand in any Haskell contribution, Rust, Python, Golang, Java, TypeScript, JavaScript, whatever you prefer to build your solution in. That's fine. And it's not part of the valuation of the quality or maturity of your project in which programming language you deliver it. In contrary, even if you pick one programming language that might be not so well positioned right now in the Cardano space, and you make some contributions to that this changes in the future in course of this hackathon, this would even be also be great and much appreciated. So programming language really doesn't matter when it comes to rating your solution. Then there was one question regarding if it does matter if you are a big team or an established community group or established enterprise even. This does matter only partially, because we have one category in the judging criteria, which is the team. But it's mostly about how the team presents itself to us in terms of what experience you have, how you communicate with the organizers, what kind of proposals you're making, maybe even come up with some proposals of how we can do the next hackathon in a better way. And you propose this as a team and present yourself in a quite professional way. This is what we will be rating for when it comes to the hackathon. But the Cardano ecosystem, among others, other blockchain ecosystems, and one thing we are exceptionally proud of are all the smaller community groups and even single person contributors. And we value this really a lot, because just to give you an example, almost the whole Java builder ecosystem was created by one person. There are chain indexers out there which have been developed by single persons, and they are doing it in their free time. And this is really what makes the Cardano ecosystem so great. This is why we won't prefer big companies over small community groups or even individual contributors. I hope that became clear. Last question I noted down is, there was one question regarding an idea that somebody had. It was about an educational system. I won't comment on those ideas before we're in the actual judging phase. This idea sounded great, but I guess all of you have great ideas that you want to submit in the end. So I cannot give you any like heads up on if it's a good thing to propose or whatever. Just be creative. Use the space that we left for you with a theme that we specified for the hackathon. One thing I can say is, and it is only partially true for a hackathon like this, but it's ideas are nothing, execution is everything. So if you have a good idea, that's only one step. The next thing or the next task you would then have is that you need to flesh out this idea. And this means that you need to present it to us, even if you're not building anything in terms of developing source code. But you have to present it to us in a way that it's easy for us to understand. So we have to really get the core thoughts behind those ideas. What's the value proposition? If it's a complex thing, and blockchain can be super complex, especially when it comes to governance, maybe it's good to attach some infographics to it so that you really make sure that we understand your ideas and even your thought process. So this is the important part about it. But I won't comment on any ideas up front before we go into the judging phase. Then I see one question that states, are teams required to use Demeter? That's not the case. You can use whatever you want. You can just go ahead and use Blockfrost if you need to consume data from the Cardano blockchain. You can also use Koios, which is like a similar community service. You can set up your own node. You can use one of the public test nets. You can even go on mainnet if you're brave enough for it. Want to do prototyping on mainnet. But if you're not so experienced with Cardano and setting up the underlying blockchain infrastructure, and still want to interface with a node, for example, directly, or with one of the available chain indexers and other interfaces like Ogmios, then it might be advisable to at least look up what Demeter has in stock for you, because it makes it super simple to start building Cardano applications. And that's it pretty much for the prepared questions. Alice, are there any more questions? Otherwise, I would just hand over to Fabian for a spontaneous presentation about, from a developer perspective, what we might be looking at when it comes to rating the maturity of the handed-in solution. And I know this is a little bit of a spontaneous ball that I throw to you, but I'm confident you can handle it. And you need to unmute yourself at least. At least I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I think he's unmuted. Yeah, we can now.
Oh, okay. Then I was hard muted. Yeah, then first hello, because I said this when I was muted, I guess. So when you submit the codes from a developer perspective, as it's a hackathon, we appreciate, of course, if you have the time to write tests, and also if you start with a test-driven approach, which is sometimes useful. If you're, for example, working with a chain indexer and you want to make sure that the data is correct, and you consumed the data correct, then it makes sense to start with a test-driven approach. But if you, as this is a hackathon, we would need an instruction to run it on our own machine, a README with environment variables, and the getting started part would be great for us, and then we will try to bring it up on our machine. It would be helpful if you would provide a Docker file. This would simplify the process, but it's not needed. And then we would jump into the sources and simply check if we understand how everything works together, or get the overall architecture. But it does not need to be super clean. It does not need to have a lot of comments or things like that. Just after you finish your project, look on the sources and try to think of an external team member, or explaining your sources to someone that is external, and then think if there's any blocker that prevents us from understanding your code and running it on our machine. I
Cool,
don't
thanks,
know
Fabian.
if I
Thanks.
answered your question. But
Of course you did. There's one more question regarding one of the categories, the judging criteria, and it's about product and tech maturity. So if you're making a technical contribution, like really having developed the software or something, then we will look into that category and figure out, okay, like Fabian said, can we build it? Is it easy to run? Is it understandable? We will even have a check out the code quality in terms of figuring out if it's like implemented to some best practices. I mean, it's a hackathon, so it's okay if there are shortcuts taken, if the code quality is not perfect, but it adds on this category if you, for example, have at least added one unit test. That's fine. So we see you're aware of that this might be a component. But it's really mostly about, is the solution something we can run on our own and execute and are able to build on, so that we get an idea of what your technical skills are. But that's only true if you're making a technical contribution. If you're, for example, coming up with a solution design, or with a user interface design, then it's about also in that category about how you execute it on that fact and how your deliverable looks like. Maybe that's a better term to put this category. So what is the maturity of the deliverable that you provided to us? And this might be as well, if you're only doing if you've done, for example, a market research, a proper one, like looking for target audiences, any personas that you're targeting, have done some research on if there are similar products around, and stuff like that. So this is also what goes into it. And then we're looking for structure of those things you handed in. So simple things. Is there a table of content? Is there like something, is it easy to follow on the documentation that you provided? Are there any conclusions made? Do you list gaps probably that you already identified, and that you, I mean, it's a hackathon, it's a very limited time frame that you have for coming up with a solution. But what you can do, of course, is if your solution is not complete, you also list like next steps or gaps or things that you are already aware of that might not be covered by the concept so far, and that need to be reconsidered in the future. That's also what adds into this category. And it might be on the website be formulated a bit misleading, because I mean, it has been defined by engineers. That's me. So maybe we do a slightly revision of it to make it a bit more general, so that it also is applicable to not so technical contributions as well, which we were asking for. There's one funny question actually in it. It's like that many people from the Cardano ecosystem or the Cardano project have left. That's nothing I can confirm. I guess the Cardano Foundation had a tremendous growth over the last years. The same is actually true for IOG and Emergo. So that's really nothing I can confirm. But it's also not part of the hackathon. This is not really a relevant, very relevant question for the hackathon at all. There are some other categories under the judging criteria. And the first one is innovation and necessity. So this really means, are you coming up with a new idea? Or is it an idea that already is existing or has been implemented in the ecosystem? Easy example is, you want to build a voting system, simple on-chain voting system. And of course, there are already some voting systems and systems for decentralized governance available. Just to name one is a system called Voter. They implement a service which you can use to perform, at least last year when I talked to the guys, where you can use straightforward stake-based or not stake-based on-chain voting. There are governance solutions available from other organizations. Just SundaeSwap comes into my mind, which have a great solution for doing things like that. So this might not be a super novel idea. So in that category, probably you won't get any super good grade if it's just like, we do the next voting system. But if you're able to tell us, okay, I'm doing a voting system, and I know there are already a couple of voting systems, but they don't account for this and that aspect, which is important for use case X, maybe country scale voting or something like that. And here is why my solution can help. And this is why it's a new thing, a novel thing, and is an innovative thing. This is where you would land a big score in that category when it comes to how I see it. Then there is the necessity factor. This means if your contribution is really something that is something that's wanted, for example, by the community, might be a visualization of the history of any votes that happened, maybe an independent visualization of, for example, an existing governance system that just provides an independent insight into how governance systems are working on Cardano. And that's something that's really requested by the community, or something that we consider as an important thing. And transparency is a big thing, especially in that theme of open governance. That might be a good thing to contribute and to get a good score on that category. Same is true for education. Education is a big thing in the blockchain space. There are various kinds of scopes for providing good education. This really depends on the target group. So it's interesting to educate people about decentralized governance in general. It's interesting to provide education for non-blockchainies, let's call them that way. So people that are not aware of that there is something out there like crypto and blockchain, but then make the topic of decentralized governance for them accessible by providing good education, maybe with a gamification approach, maybe just by providing good educational scripts or visualization, infographic. That's a cool thing. You could also aim for providing education for enterprises, or even for regulators, because that's especially one of the tasks of Cardano Foundation, where we are trying to talk to European regulators, interest groups in Asia, in the States, and not so much as telling them blockchain is the all-hail solution for every problem out there, but for example, to explain them, okay, how would an open and decentralized governance system function, in which areas it might be not applicable to use, where it is probably necessary to make it be based on blockchain technology, where you probably don't need blockchain technology because there might be some voting solutions which just do not benefit from a public permissionless blockchain at all. And this is definitely one of the tasks where and contribution where we would be interested in, and which we would consider as a necessity for the blockchain space in general, and of course in particular for Cardano. Then there's the usability and user experience category, which we rate with 20%. The most straightforward way to interpret this category is just you're building a software, it needs a user interface. That user interface might be an API. Then it's of course from an end user perspective, it's maybe a bit hard to use. But if your target audience is, and that's what user experience is all about, it's having identified your target audience and then providing them with the appropriate user experience. So if your target audience is a B2B model, for example, and it's really about another service consuming your application, then just providing us with an API might be enough. But we would, of course, expect that you also provide us with some documentation of how we use this API. And this might just give us a Postman collection or something, or provide us with some very structured instructions on how you intend that your API should be used. And that would be good for that case. But if you're targeting end users with a voting center or something for Cardano, Age of Voltaire, voting applications and governance voting operations, then of course we would expect you to deliver a user interface design. Might be in a fully fleshed out implementation, so we get like a React application or Angular application, whatever, a mobile application, and you hand over this ready-made application to us, and we can click around and test it and see how it's working in an end-to-end way. That's of course great. But what you can also do is just give us a very rough application, just because sometimes implementing those things is super tedious. And I was a backend coder back in the day, so I know how painful it is if you get tasked with coming up with a good UI. That's okay, just give us this rough thingy that gives us an idea. But also, if really the purpose is coming up with a flashy UI, please give us a UI design, or at least something that gives us an idea of how you imagine the UI should work, and maybe even point out what are the unique things of it. So usually people click buttons and have an option box, but that's misleading, because for governance you have even taken into account the sequence in which certain options are presented to the voters. We have this random shuffle mechanism in there to make sure that there's no bias when it comes to this and that. That's also something we appreciate if you consider this for the usability and user experience. That's a good question. So will each submission get a report on how it's judged based on these judging criteria? To be honest, I try to achieve this. We are trying to achieve this, but we need to figure out when it comes to capacity for judging those things, if we need to shortlist certain things and then have only a rough feedback, For example, the judging results in the first round and then have a more detailed feedback in the second round? Yeah, that's a good question. So at the moment we have 300 participants. For the rounds. Let's see. I'd say we have at least like 3 rounds. First round is like a more rough scan through all submissions being made. But of course, dedicating time to each of the submissions, going through them, and then figuring out the ones that are the ones with the highest scores. Then in the second round, reiterate over it, maybe get some more feedback from our peers within Cardano Foundation, within Emergo, do a first judgment round with a closed circle of the judges, and get a last vote. And then, if I'm not wrong, we also have a presentation round. And please, Alice, correct me if I'm wrong, where then like the last shortlisted candidates get the opportunity to in person present their solutions to us, and then we make like the final call and decide on who wins the prize in the end.
So we actually changed that part, so it will be just the judging by the platform.
Okay, so there we have it. But I expect like 3 rounds. First round, first shortlisting, filtering, then a second round where we reiterate over the best participants from first round, and then do a final call on who wins on the last shortlist. This is how I plan to do the judgments. And we will provide you with feedback for all the contributions, because we just value that you're participating in the hackathon, and we want to give you valuable feedback on how we saw the different categories of it, because everything else would just be unfair. Already looking for the sleepless nights that I committed to this, but that's cool. That's cool. Next category is the go-to-market strategy. This addresses one of the points we were talking about in the first session, in the kickoff session, together with especially the guys from Emergo, because they are from the venture capital arm of Emergo. And this is one of the needs in the Cardano ecosystem that we also figured out from talks with community teams, that besides support on the technical end, it's also super important to support the teams in growing a viable business model and a sustainable business model. And that's why we added this category to the hackathon. So when you come up with a good solution, we are interested in if you made any investigations in the business model. So how do you plan to generate revenue? Did you identify if the solution that you are providing is able to generate any revenue? What is the revenue model? Are there any scalability effects that you could leverage when it comes to this business model? So does it simply scale with user? Does it scale with transactions? Is it a pure B2B model and you just plan to be super expensive? That super expensive service that's only consumed by a very rare clients, which might be not so super robust, but might still be viable, like you see in like luxury goods, where you don't have the volume of transactions happening or of users in the space, but you're also making great revenue and just with being expensive. God, don't tell the Emergo guys that I'm talking about business models and stuff like that. But that's why they're on the judgment panel as well, and are providing their input there. It might also be that you are submitting something which does not have a business model at all, because that's also some of the tasks that Cardano Foundation is here. There are just some tools out there for the developer ecosystem that are hard to justify to have a good direct income model, at least, like a chain indexer. No one wants to pay you for using your chain indexer. It's just a library, and I build on it. But I mean, on the other hand, that's also how the open source community works. You're creating, like Fabian, for example, he just spun up a service that makes it simple to access ADA handles. That's probably, and he will never get paid for it. But it's also a nice service for other for other products to build on top of it, and then make revenue on it. And then those kinds of services are also services that we need, and that maybe can only be operated by something like a blockchain foundation, which has not the foremost goal of making revenue, but of course has the foremost goal of making the ecosystem, render the ecosystem valuable for people that want to build on Cardano. Just point out that with the contribution you're making, you don't see any direct income model, and that's why an organization like Cardano Foundation or like even a consortium of different community groups might still be interested in operating such a system. That's enough if this is your contribution for that part. I hope this provides some clarity on what we are expecting in here. So if you want to warm the hearts of the venture capitalists, provide a good go-to-market strategy here and revenue channel analysis and whatnot. Last part is the team. I think I already iterated over this. This is really just about how you present yourselves. When you're handing in a presentation about the product that you have created or the contribution that you have created, just make sure you have a first slide in there which gives us an information about who's the team or who's the individual contributor, what is your background, are you a student in the university, what are your plans, what amazes you about Cardano, why you're participating in the hackathon. Those are the things that we want to know. If you're an enterprise, of course, we're interested in what kind of enterprise are you, where you're situated, why are you building on Cardano, or why are you considering to build on Cardano, and just wanted to try out how it feels with this hackathon. That's fine. Just give us this information, and this will contribute to this category. Like said, we won't favor big companies over individual contributors because we really believe in decentralization, and that's also why we believe in smaller organizations contributing to this hackathon. Cool. So much for what I'm able to share on like a, let's say, improvised Q&A session here. There's one more question I'd like to ask Fabian. I know you have contributed also to the Ethereum ecosystem, or let's consider it the wider Ethereum ecosystem. Is there any, from other hackathons or looking at other ecosystems, is there any wish you would have for a contribution that might come out of this hackathon? Any ideas? And a second question, if you would have the chance to participate in the hackathon, what kind of system would you have built?
I bet this is a test to check if I'm still building on Ethereum, but one thing that we miss, I don't know, the goal of this hackathon is transparency, or it's one of the challenges. But what we really miss in every application is how to test the application end to end. So typically you would use and it's also on my roadmap, but I have a lot of things on my stack, so I cannot deliver this in maybe not in this year. So that's why I'm mentioning it here. Typically we use, or I use often Cypress to test applications end to end. But also Selenium would be feasible. One thing is that you often need to interact with wallets. And in the Ethereum ecosystem, there are plugins for those end-to-end testing tools like Cypress. So there's a Cypress plugin to interact with MetaMask. I think I never saw something like this in the Cardano ecosystem. So it would be really helpful for every dApp that interacts with a wallet to have a really end-to-end test, like sending a transaction and on a test net, for example, and then checking if some minutes later it's visible in the dApp. So this would really offer an end-to-end test, blockchain end-to-end. And now you want to, the second question was a system that I would build if
you get the chance to earn 10,000 USD as a community member, and you also get the chance to visit the Cardano Summit. What would you contribute to this hackathon?
So I, as a student, so this is a really not as a student. So I, as a student, had the idea to, not on blockchain, to build a service where you can write a book together or make music together, and it would be great to see something like this on chain, to have people collaborating on, for example, a book, writing a book. And there always, if you have a lot of people involved to, for example, write a book, you need to make polls, and you need to have a voting, for example, for the subject, or what is it, a fantasy book, or is it sci-fi, whatever. And it would be great to have those people in a collaboration creating a book on chain, and then after they wrote the book together, you can have the book online. You can link to every line written by which wallet ever, and then if it's an ADA wallet and you make money with the book, you can also send it to the ADA handle, whatever. So just dreaming around, but yeah, something like this would be cool, and then showcase the voting and add this transparency to it.
Well, Fabian, pretty sure someone will build it now and hand it in.
Would be great.
Why don't I see any catalyst proposal from you regarding this idea?
Don't know if I can submit this as OCF member.
I think it would be unfair.
Oh.
There's one thing I'd like to point you to, and thank you very much, Fabian, for sharing this. One thing I'd like to point you to, and it is our resource center. It's on the site from Hacker Earth of the Cardano Hackathon, and we listed some resources there that help you getting track on or getting into the topic of Cardano. There are quite some cool videos, and I started with it actually, my Cardano journey, when it came to at least getting some more structured information of it, and it's the nerd out videos on YouTube. It's pretty cool. If you want to have an overview of how Cardano works, the basic concepts, but even the more specific ones, like funny things that are called, for example, Franken addresses, just check out this channel, and you get some good understanding and education about Cardano. And I'm just highlighting it here because this is also like a great example of a community contribution, or of a single person contributing to the ecosystem. I know that this guy is not only a single contributor anymore, but he started as it. So that's pretty cool. There are also some more resources about some more YouTube channels from DC Spark, for example, where the guys touch on some very advanced topics, actually, even not limited only to the Cardano blockchain. We have the IOG Academy listed there, Blackboard series from Edutainment, and then some of the developer tools that we were presenting during last week's session. I just shared the link in the webinar chat to the resource center. I hope you can find it. And I think we had some issues with that this subpage wasn't visible until shortly, but I guess Alice fixed it, and now everyone can see this website. Other thing I'd like to point out is we have a Discord server where you can reach out to us, so to the org team, to Cardano developers, or developers from Cardano Foundation, if you have any questions and need support. There is also a discussion section on Hacker Earth for this hackathon. I just added the link also to the webinar chat, where you can also post questions. And if you're just using Twitter or X, how it's called nowadays, you can also ask questions there. We created a thread even for this AMA specifically, but ask us questions there and just tag Cardano Foundation, and in some way it will end up on our desk, and we are trying to get back to you and provide you with any guidance if there is any guidance needed. And maybe last 10 seconds, 15 seconds time for you to submit any questions. Otherwise, I would just call it a day for today, because I don't have any more questions to Fabian, and I don't want to bother him with any more spontaneous balls that I throw in his direction. I'd like to say thank you very much again for participating in this webinar, but also in this hackathon at all. For the ones that are time zone wise, don't have the chance to attend live. So thanks again, and see you next week when we're doing the so-called sprint session. Thank you very much, and have a good day.